2018. Ninth year of Cheongi, fourth month and fifth day by the heavenly calendar, and Tem Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk. And it's 48 degrees and rainy at the Cheongguk Palace this morning. And we're only getting up to 56 degrees, which is quite a bit cooler than the normal high or average high this time of year of about 70 or 71 degrees for a daytime high. So it's going to be a cool and dreary and damp Saturday. Cloudy, rain tapering off, but it will continue to be cloudy. And tonight it'll be perhaps a shower, not as cool though, only going down to 54 after a high of 56 in the daytime, so very little temperature change in the nighttime. And then tomorrow we'll be getting up to our more normal temperatures in the 70s, a daytime high of 77. Let's go immediately to the headlines. We had another terrible shooting yesterday in a school, a high school in Santa Fe, Texas. And, you have to wonder, when are we going to start protecting our children? When is America going to get beyond this dogma that schools have to be gun-free zones? I was watching a report by the news conference by the sheriff, I think, of Santa Fe, who talked about how first responders, police officers, state police responded very bravely, that they went into the building as soon as they arrived. And that's all very good. I applaud those officers. That they, as soon as they arrived, they drew their guns and they faced the shooter. They engaged the shooters immediately after they arrived. But maybe I'm missing something here, but it seems again that there was no one on the scene at the time who could respond in seconds rather than minutes. 10 dead, 10 wounded. And this time the weapon was a shotgun and a revolver. Looking at the headlines here, on Drudge, America's latest teen killer bullied loner in trench coat, 10 dead in Texas, guns, pressure cookers, pipe bombs. So he was a very disturbed individual, We are going through this period of judgment, and I am reminded of the time of the Pharaoh, when there was this judgment on the second generation there, on the young people there, the firstborn of Israel, of Egypt. I'm sorry, the firstborn of Egypt. And certainly, there's some kind of judgment taking place on America's second generation now. Looking at this top article on Drudge right now, Santa Fe High School shooting suspect identified as Dimitrios Pagurtzis, is that how you pronounce it? But I don't think I'm going to say his name again anyway, because one cause of these shootings, I think, is that the media gives so much attention to the individuals who perpetrate these crimes.
This was the fifth.
And I think there is a sort of a copycat element here, don't you think? I think the media needs to reconsider just exactly how they cover these kinds of situations. This is a article on CBSNews.com. The suspect in a deadly shooting rampage at a Texas high school Friday morning has been identified as 10 people were killed and 10 others wounded in the shooting Friday morning at Santa Fe High School, south of Houston, Texas. Governor Greg Abbott said the suspected shooter, who was in custody, also had explosive devices, including a Molotov cocktail, that were found in the school and nearby, who called the assault one of the most heinous attacks we've ever seen in the history of Texas schools. Police found pressure cookers and pipe bombs around the school, one law enforcement source told CBS News. And this man has been booked into the Galveston County Jail and is being held with no bond on charges of capital murder and aggravated assault of a peace officer. Additional charges may follow, according to the Galveston County Sheriff's Office. A substitute teacher and several students were among the dead, law enforcement sources tell CBS News. Senior investigative producer Pat Milton. Students describe this man as quiet and weird because a long trench coat was part of his wardrobe, even on days when the temperature neared 90 degrees, CBS News' Omar Villafranca reports. His motive is still unclear. The federal law enforcement source, there was still an active search for explosives. CBS News and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Peggs reports several law enforcement agencies are searching a mobile home less than 3 miles away from the school where records show the teen lived. CBS News KHOU reports. Investigators were in the process of serving search warrants at 2 residences and the suspect's car, but they were using extreme caution because of the potential for more explosive devices to be uncovered, said Abbott. Abbott said the suspect had information in journals, on the computer, and on cell phones that indicated he wanted to commit the shooting and take his own life afterward. Abbott said the suspect gave himself up and told authorities that he did not have the courage to take his own life. The man posted the phrase dangerous days on social media before the rampage, along with a pentagram symbol. And as you know, from the education that we've received from our second king, that is a satanic symbol. I don't know if he actually believed in Satan or they just thought it was cool, but definitely he had this spiritual connection at the minimum to Satanism. 2 weapons were used in the attack, a shotgun and a .38 caliber revolver, both of which were legally owned by the suspect's father. Abbott said he didn't know whether the father was aware the suspect had taken the guns. Abbott said the federal and state prosecutors would jointly handle the case. 2 other people were being questioned. He said one person was acting suspiciously at the scene, and another who he said may have information and needed to be fully interviewed. A school resource officer was shot and injured in the shooting. CBS News has learned. Okay, so there was a resource officer at the school. Another law enforcement officer was also reported injured but was not shot. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez said a male suspect who he didn't identify was in custody and a person of interest was detained and questioned. Both were believed to be students at the school. This man played on the junior varsity football team and was a member of a dance squad with a local Greek Orthodox church. His social media pages showed multiple images of guns. He recently posted a photo wearing a T-shirt reading "Born to Kill," and there were also photos of a long green jacket with Nazi regalia. Student Damon Rabin told CBSN he was 1 classroom away from where the shooting happened in the art hall during the first period. Rabin said the substitute teacher went out and looked and saw the shooter, who he described as a short male wearing a black trench coat, carrying a black backpack, and armed with a sawed-off shotgun. Rabin didn't name the shooter, but said he believed him to be a former student, either a sophomore or a junior. He described him as a quiet and weird type of guy who stood out because he wore a trench coat every day. Valerie Martin, who teaches at the junior high school in Santa Fe, told the New York Times she had this man in her pre-AP language arts class last year and said no warning signs. She described him as bright and said he had participated in the school's competition for a national history contest. He was quiet, and he wasn't quiet in a creepy way, Martin told the paper. She said she has her students write in journals and never noticed him writing or drawing anything disturbing. CBSN security analyst Paul Violas said one major question investigators will look into is why this man allegedly opened fire in the art room and whether the class was specifically targeted. Viola said investigators will also seek to determine what websites this man visited in the days leading up to the shooting. Neighbors of the suspect told KHOU that this man lived at the mobile home with his family, who usually kept to themselves. A woman who answered the phone at a number associated with the family declined to speak with the Associated Press. "Give us our time right now, thank you," she said. Speaking at a press conference Friday, Senator Ted Cruz said more would be learned about the suspect in coming days and what red flags, what warning signs there may have been or may not have been. "I'm sure we'll have a robust conversation about what more could have been done to prevent this horrible tragedy," Cruz said. Abbott said any warning signs that did exist were non-existent or very imperceptible, and said the suspect had no criminal history. Abbott said that unlike Parkland, unlike Sutherland Springs, there were not those types of warning signs. He was referring to the February 14th, and we know about that. All right, so that's the story on CBS News as of last evening, yesterday evening. This is updated 7:56 p.m. Yesterday evening. Having a resource officer on school, that is to have an armed police officer in the school, reduces the body count by 70%, according to information that I was given at a seminar that I attended in Dallas at the NRA convention recently. But it seems that this was a part of the 30% that where the body count was not reduced, or at least, well, yeah, I don't know if it was reduced, but I guess he gave himself up. So he apparently shot as many people as he wanted to, and then gave himself up because he says he didn't have the guts to kill himself. Let's go to that Infowars link that I sent to the tech team. And if you could begin that at 3:25, and if possible, if you could make it so that I could see it as well. Go ahead and start the video. Yeah.
Down the street, we're at the corner of Tower Road and SH6 in Santa Fe, Texas here. And just down the road is Santa Fe High School, where a school shooting has just happened. 10 dead, reports of pipe bombs and other explosives being used, and we do have the identity of the shooter. It is, his mugshot has already been, here's Demetrios Pagorshis. So the mugshot has already been released, the scene of the crime. So we're gonna step out here just so you can get a scene. Down SH6, and we wanted to get as close to the high school as possible. But for obvious reasons, they have these roads shut down. They have actually made a perimeter all around the high school, and you cannot get much closer than this. Of course, you have bomb squads on the scene, and you have a bunch of sheriff's department cars and police officers, everybody on the scene here, because there were also explosives used. So we're just going to go out here, and I want to just kind of show you what we're dealing with here. And then we're going to go back over to the media press conference area where they're staging media, and we're going to be reporting live from there and giving you live coverage of that as well. But this is the scene right now. This is about as close as you can get to the high school. You can see that there's other media outlets that are already set up over here, and we'll just quickly walk and talk with you, and I'll give you all the details that we know. So this Dimitri apparently is posting videos on social media with his guns, with other stuff. Apparently he has a shirt that says, I'm a killer or something like that. And then also apparently has Nazi propaganda, Nazi artifacts, iron crosses, apparently too, that he was putting out on social media. So all of this is obviously going to be absorbed and reported as just the base details that we're getting right now from the scene of the crime. But again, this is about as close as we can get to the high school. As you can see right here, law enforcement has the road shut down at the intersection of Maple and SH6. They also have the intersection of Maple and Tower shut down, which is where we will be doing a press conference at 6 p.m. Central. So we're looking for eyewitnesses.
Is the internet frozen there? Is it buffering? Okay.
So we're looking for eyewitnesses.
All right, so There's Nazi regalia, but there's also, we need to also remember that the CBS News mentioned the pentagram. So there was an interest in Satanism, and also the black trench coat. I don't know if he was a goth guy, but the king was saying, what was it, yesterday or the day before, that these people dressing in goth, or basically what they're saying is, I'm not Christian. This is what the king was explaining to us. I'm not Christian. This is the message that they are trying to send. Go ahead and restart the video if you can, tech team. They're saying, I'm not bound by the morality of Christianity, and that makes me cool because I'm free, is what they're trying to say. I'm free of the restrictions that Christianity puts on me. Of course, that is exactly the message that the archangel tries to send, which is Satanism, the fallen archangel, Satan. That is the message that he tries to send. He says, look, God oppresses. God is an oppressor. God is an oppressor. That's what the archangel tries to tell people. God is an oppressor, and I will make you free. I will release you from that oppression that God puts on you, all those rules and all those things and that. Oh, you can't eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. I mean, who is he to tell you that? This is what the archangel tries to say. Video unavailable. Well, that's interesting. Okay, are we still online? Okay, we appear to. So I don't know if it's a problem with the internet or what, but anyway. So he was talking to some people on the street. I'm disappointed that we're not able to give that to you, but Infowars was there because this was near Houston, and Infowars, of course, is based in Austin, and so I'm sure they got there very, very quickly. But talk about warning signs. Yeah, I'd say that the trench coat, the pentagram, these were definitely warning signs, and of course, the father is derelict in not securing his weapons, and the parents, if he's living with his parents, apparently he's living with his family, so this is an exception to the case where, I don't know, maybe I don't know about the father. The king has pointed out that in almost every case, these kids who do these things are living without their father, or in a fatherless family. We'll have to see whether that holds true here or not. I've not, but anyway, the father. All we know about the father right now is that he didn't secure his guns, so that his son was able to take them, and not just one but two, a shotgun and a .38 caliber revolver, and to commit these kinds of crimes with that. But especially if you see your son running around with a trench coat and 90-degree heat and pentagrams, then yeah, the least you can do is secure your guns. I mean, even if your son is a very normal child, you would still want to secure your guns. But especially if he's into Satanism, then yeah, better do that. Better do that. Right. Let's see. I'm looking at another video right now that we may be able to play. Okay, let's see. I'm going to send this link to the tech team so they can play it as soon as I get it. But things are going on right now, even in our own community. One of our dear brothers had a very serious traffic accident on Thursday morning, and fortunately, his life is not in danger. But tech team, check your email, please. Life is not in danger, but he broke quite a variety of bones, and he's still in the hospital, and I believe he may be having an operation either today or Monday. And that will not be the first operation. So the doctors are trying to basically put him back together because we don't know yet about the details of his accident, but he needs our prayers. And his family is asking for prayers that's for Joe Gaval. All right, while the tech team is bringing up that second video, let's go through some of the other headlines on Drudge, and we'll do that until the tech team brings the video up. A revealed secret FBI source for Russia investigation met with 3 Trump advisors during the campaign. Washington Post knows the name, but it's holding it back. And New York Times was investigating. It says not spying. And a gunman shot at Trump Hotel was a stripper porn actor. This was yesterday morning, actually it was very early yesterday morning. This was in Florida. Istanbul summit urges international force to protect Palestinians. International force, yeah. A steady flow of political royal blood to Congress. Clint Eastwood set to re-team with Bradley Cooper. Hawaii residents look for normalcy amid ash and lava. Of course, on Hawaii, I think the explosions are pretty normal. All right, we've got that video up, it looks like, so as soon as we can get it started, let's let it play. So this is a location near the Santa Fe High School. And I think he's going to be interviewing some of these kids. This is the Infowars reporter.
No, probably should have.
Okay, let's skip
we
about...
we just had to get everything set up here.
Let's skip a little bit, maybe 3 minutes or so.
It is about 5:43.
Okay.
Just to let you know what's going on here. Earlier today at Santa Fe High School in Texas, just outside of Houston, you had a gunman enter the high school. Reports are at least 10 dead, at least 10 others wounded, including a cop critically wounded. And this individual went into the school with a shotgun and also had explosives on him, pipe bombs and a pressure cooker bomb is what's being reported. So a very deranged, disturbed individual, obviously. That's the type of individual that does something like this. I have heard, though, that this is an individual that wasn't a total outcast at school, that did actually have friends. And, in fact, the law enforcement here even took in another individual that they thought may be an accomplice. So you've got that going on. Some people are saying that the individual was bullied in school by teachers even. So you've got those reports that are kind of surfacing, which obviously are very disturbing. If that's the case, if it wasn't maybe a form of constructive criticism that they're saying was bullying, I don't really know. But you had a situation in Florida with Nicholas Cruz being bullied, and then it sounds like you maybe have that same narrative here panning out in Santa Fe, Texas. But we'll figure all that out. You know, everybody wants to find a solution to this. And maybe the solution, at least in the way that we're searching for it, doesn't really exist. You know, gun control, well, that's not really going to work. Gun legislation, well, we already have it. It doesn't really work. You know, murder is illegal. That doesn't stop people from killing one another. You know, so maybe it's time for us to start looking at mental health. And, you know, think about a high school student. You know, I guess, you know, around that age, you know, high school, you know, junior high school. This is when children are more prone to bullying other individuals or being bullied. You know, maybe you try to get a new narrative here, and instead of, you know, having all these anti-bullying campaigns just for the sake of saying you're anti-bullying, well, why not say, hey, look, you know, you don't realize the psychological damage that you're doing to people when you're bullying them. You don't know that individual what could be on the other side of your bullying. And, you know, maybe if people, at least in high school, understood that, maybe bullying wouldn't be such an issue, and you wouldn't have a situation where a student that gets bullied would end up going and shooting the school and killing people. So again, the details are still emerging. It was really sad and incredible to me that where we were at before this at the HEB, there was an area, a building behind us, where they had the you know, victims' family members, parents, and people that were there just trying to figure out if their kid was still alive. So they're sitting there for hours after the event takes place, and they still don't know. They don't have any answers on their kids. You know, the teachers, they don't have any answers on their aunts, their uncles, their moms, their dads. So it really just, I think, kind of tells a story of how gruesome this was, and the carnage that these people are dealing with inside the school, where even hours after this took place, you still had family members that didn't have answers. You still had people
Let's pause it right there for just a second.
Did my family member make it out safely? Did they...
He talks about a number of things. One thing he talks about is having anti-bullying campaigns in high schools. I think I remember this going... You know, I went to high school, 40-some years ago? You know, I mean, come on. 40 years from now, there will still be bullies in high school. And you're not going to stop bullying by trying to deal with the bullies. The only way you're going to stop bullying is to help the bullied victims stand up to the bullies. Because it's when people stand up to them that the bullies stop bullying. I mean, that's the best anti-bullying campaign. And how do you do that? Well, the king has a good solution. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a very good, I would say, is a very good solution. You know, it gives them both the confidence and the skills to deal with bullies. So, and also the kind of physical exercise, by the way, is very good for children of that age. It helps them to, I think, sort of getting rid of some of that energy, putting it out, you know, putting it out instead of letting it sort of build up inside their trench coats and everything, you know. But and also we haven't heard anything yet about the psychotropic drugs. I don't know if that's going to come out later, but we'll see about that. You know, and the parents not knowing, I think something has to be done. I know that when there are airline crashes, airlines have become very good, relatively good at dealing with the families of airline crash victims and communicating with them in a timely manner. I think probably their experience can be applied here. But you know, was this kid bullied? I don't know. We read in the CBS News that he was football or something like that. He was on a team. But anyway, we don't know really his situation here. I think right now a lot of assumptions are being made, but we definitely need more information, and especially in terms of the drugs. We don't know what's been going on there. All right, let's skip forward a little bit. Add about 5 minutes to where you are. Yeah, okay.
Let's start at either 6 or 6:30. I've heard conflicting reports. It's 5:55 right now, local here.
Okay, so you're just going to show the news conference?
My dead friend, and it looks like these are children from the elementary school. Even if they wanted to legislate something...
Okay, let's watch this, yeah. But no, we had that interview. Let's watch this interview.
We bring people the truth, and it's sad that they lie about us and you think we're liars, because we're not. We bring people the truth.
Okay.
All right. Well, God bless you, ma'am.
You too.
So, you see, this is what happens, and people... I'm just out here talking to people. I'm not even coming here with an agenda or anything, but because I have an Infowars mic, I'm the bad guy. And unfortunately, they say Alex Jones is a liar. I challenge them on that, and then they say things that aren't even lies. So, but that's just what we regularly deal with out here. So we'll move on. Hopefully we don't have any more of that, or maybe we do. Excuse me, sir. Would you mind answering a couple questions? Just curious, what brought you out here today?
You know, just showing love and support. I mean, I'm not even from Santa Fe. I'm from Galveston, but you know, in times like this, we need all the love and support we can get, and just embracing all these people, all these families.
So you just came down here by yourself just to show support?
I don't know anybody here, but you know, we all need each other at one point or another, so that's why I'm here.
What do you think about this? I mean, everybody wants to find the solution. Everybody wants to find something to blame. But, you know, it seems to be divided. It's a divisive thing when we do that. How can we actually bring people together to find solutions?
Well, when we realize death is forever present, we'll all come together as one. So, I mean, no matter what race, gender, religion, you know, diversity, no matter what, we come together as one because we love each other. That's why.
Now, if someone was to ask you, or I'll ask you right now, what do you think is the easiest, simplest thing that we can just do right now and get it done to protect schools from this happening in the future?
Well, when politicians stop telling us that we can prevent it, there's no way we can prevent it, but we can be more prepared for when this comes around. So that's one of the things we have to look forward to. And
hey,
just,
stop that right there. Stop that right there.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And even if they wanted to legislate something,
stop it right there. Yeah, that man just that young man just said something very, very intelligent. Whoa, you know. We can't prevent it, but we can be prepared we can prepare ourselves for when it happens. Wow. Vote that man for Congress. Shoot. You know, what is he doing? You know, wow. Put him in Congress, yeah. Yeah, he's very intelligent. We cannot prevent it, but we can be prepared for when it happens. All right, continue.
Takes months to get legislation through. You got to do something on the ground level immediately.
Right. I mean, you know, we just got to take steps and progress. I mean, nothing like this is going to be prevented forever, but as long as we take steps, we'll be all right.
All right. Hey, thank you, sir. God bless you for being out here.
Owen, you can't legislate away sin. That's the problem. That's what's wrong. You know, this people are moving away from God so bad. Pastor Samuel, you know, that's what's wrong. That's what's wrong with this country. People are falling away from God. They don't care about God, and it's just like, what was his name, Benjamin Watson? That guy that said, football player that said, it's not a skin problem, it's a sin problem. That's what's wrong with this country. That's what's wrong with that boy. He was a Satanist. He was a Satanist. The man worshiped the devil. That's what's wrong with his country. People need to get back to Jesus Christ and Him crucified. That's the only hope. That's the only solution, people. The only solution is Jesus Christ and what He did for you on the cross of Calvary. End of story.
All right, and
all right, let's stop it right there.
You wonder too, if there's
what this man in the overalls is saying is also quite true. That this kid was a Satanist. We know this from the pentagram symbol that he was using, and also basically sort of the black trench coat that he was wearing in 90-degree heat. I mean, you know, if you're wearing, you know, black trench coat, you're either training to become a Muslim woman, or you're a Satanist, or maybe both. But it's and what the man in the overalls said is quite true. That we need to get back to Jesus Christ. We need to get back to Christ. That is the judgment that we're receiving right now. There is we know that there is a physical world and spiritual world, and that there is a spiritual cause to these kinds of things. These are not unrelated to the spirit world, and we need to understand both aspects, both the physical cause. Maybe the physical cause could have been, you know, the drugs or the lack of a father or various other things. But there's also a spiritual cause here, and it's happening within a certain spiritual context. Of course, the betrayal by the Han mother. That is the context in which these things are happening, and there is judgment that is going on. And it does seem to be getting worse, and it will continue to get worse, most likely. Most likely. All right, let's continue with this video.
Situation where a child is never exposed to God or religion or faith or anything like that, and they kind of grow up not even realizing it, but a nihilist, if you're a nihilist and you believe in nothing, then it's a lot easier for you to pull a trigger and kill a bunch of people and not feel any remorse. So obviously that's a human consciousness, a human perception issue where your fellow humans are so dehumanized to you that killing them is something that you don't even really think twice about. You go out and do it for whatever reason, but there's definitely something to be said about, you can say it's religion, but it's just about caring about a fellow human being. It's just about understanding that we're all in this together as humans, and that death ultimately awaits all of us, and then whatever comes after that, it's going to be the same for all of us. And it's just amazing to think, unfortunately you have individuals that are so callous and they've lost touch with their humanity that they would commit a heinous act like this. And we see it more and more, and I'd have to agree, I think it's a mental health thing more than anything. You can point to a bunch of different issues. Maybe there's a security problem, a gun problem, a this problem, a that problem. But if it's a humanity problem and it's a mental health problem through and through.
Stop it right there, please.
Every time.
We can't claim to...
Mental health comes up in these situations right there. But yeah, freeze it there. Freeze it there for a minute. Oh, you had it there for not this guy, but the other guy. Okay, freeze it there for a minute. We'll watch that in a minute. But mental health, I want to say something about the mental health thing. Alexander Solzhenitsyn and others have written about how mental health was used as a political weapon in dictatorships, in communism, but also in the Nazi and these dictatorships, because mental health is psychiatry and psychology are very subjective sciences. Some people even hesitate to use the word science. And one person pointed out that as medicine, as normal medicine advances, diseases, we have fewer and fewer diseases. In other words, for example, whether it's measles or smallpox or flu or whatever, there are many diseases that the people used to die from that we don't die from now, and there are a lot fewer people getting those diseases. Tuberculosis or all those things. Cancer is an exception, but anyway, that's another story. But with psychiatry, the more that psychiatry advances, the more diseases you have. The more people you have, more sick people you have. So so I'm a little bit reluctant about putting this emphasis on mental health. All right, especially if you start giving government the power and the authority to decide whether someone is mentally healthy or not, whether someone is healthy enough to have access to guns. Now, in this case, this is a 17-year-old kid who got the guns that he used from his father. These were his father's guns. And I don't know if he stole them. I don't know if his father gave them to him. Maybe he had regular access to them and the father didn't care. I don't know. But that's a problem right there, isn't it? If you have a Satanist child, if you have a child who's walking around with pentagrams and black trench coats in 90-degree heat, lock up your guns. Lock up your guns. Put trigger locks on them or whatever. Separate the ammunition or whatever, But the father, if he was a part of this boy's life, has a great deal to answer for him. And I don't know I hope the police are investigating and perhaps indicting and charging him, because I would think that he needs to be guilty of some kind of a crime or other for not securing his guns. I guess that's the way they pronounce that word these days. They pronounce it nihilism these days. That's the dictionary.com. We were taught something different. 50 years ago, I said a while ago, I was in high school 40-some years ago. I was thinking back. I was actually in high school a half a century ago. But there was bullying back then, a half a century back then. And you know what? A half a century from now, there will still be bullying. There will still be bullies. But you have to, just like there will be evil people, after 1,000 years in Christ's kingdom. But you have to have the tools and skills to deal with those people, because those people are not going to go away. And just like the man in the white overall said, you cannot legislate sin. You cannot get rid of sin through legislation. All right, let's hear what this man has to say.
What brought you out here? What do you think about the event today?
My son goes to school out here, and they texted me this morning about 10 to 8, and there's a shooter at the school, and so we had to go pick him up.
So you have got your son and he's safe?
Yeah, I picked him up. He was home before 8:30.
Now I was over by the school, and there's a lot of people that are still over there that still don't have questions answered. They don't know where their kids are. I mean, talk about what that must have been like.
Oh, it would have been crazy, but my son had a phone. I was in contact with him the whole time until I got right to him, and so I couldn't imagine not being able to be in touch with him.
And what was he saying to you at the time? Was he afraid, or was he just updating you on the situation?
He's just hyped up. They had him across the street behind the mechanical shop there, and he just really, at that point in time, he knew that there was a couple people that had been shot, but not the full extent. And
so he was in touch with you while it was actively going on?
Yes, and as he was leaving the building, he was telling me where he was going, where he was going to be.
And I can't imagine, I mean, your heart starts racing. Were you trying to get there as soon as possible? What's going through your mind?
Oh, yeah, I'm get there as fast as you can, but when you got 6 lanes of traffic trying to go the same direction, it didn't work too good, so I just went down the center lane.
And is your son here today?
Yeah, he's around there with his little buddy, his friend.
Now, what would you say? Are you the young man's mother? I mean, psychologically, the impact of this event. I mean, what has he been like today?
I think it's harder after the fact. Once your kid's safe, then you take in what happened.
I don't think it's all soaked in on him yet. He hasn't wrapped around it, I don't think.
That's almost good. He's able to at least come out here and, still have some joy despite what he had to go through today.
He came out here to be with his friend. His friend was in the room where the shooter was.
His best friend was there?
Yeah. He's here too.
He's right there with a striped shirt on. My son right here.
Have they discussed this in front of you guys at all?
My son did. He came home and told us what Aiden went through, but other than that, that's all we really knew.
How do you think the school moves on from this?
Arm our teachers, educate our children on gun safety, and arm everybody.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you that the quickest, easiest solution would be to have an armed guard at the school. That seems like the most logical thing. You agree?
Absolutely. You can't protect our kids if you've got no way to protect them.
Yeah.
I mean.
So would you feel safer sending your kid back to school if you knew there was an armed guard or his teachers were armed?
Yes.
Already had his own firearm. So
they just can't protect them. I mean, it's the bad ones that are bringing the guns to school, not the good ones, and there's no way to protect them from that.
Well, and I found it incredible that apparently I was told that there were 2 armed guards on campus, but how is he able to go in with a shotgun and do so much damage and be going classroom to classroom throwing pipe bombs into rooms? How does that even happen?
All we know is that he had
He always wore that jacket, so it wasn't out of line for him. They said that he always wore that coat, so nobody thought nothing. And some teachers seen something out of line and pulled this fire alarm.
So he always dressed like that, so he didn't raise any eyebrows.
Yeah,
right.
He studied what he was doing. He fit into his surroundings. He knew what was going on.
So you think he was maybe thinking about this for a while?
Oh, yeah, he's been bullied and picked on, and I'm sure if he started wearing that jacket and continued to wear it, that's a good, he's planned it ahead of time, I would think.
What about the anti-bullying messages that we always hear? It seems to me they kind of leave this point out where, you don't know the type of psychological damage you're doing to somebody. They could come back and point a gun at you.
I think that they need to allow these kids to
I was on the phone with him at the time this was happening over an incident from the day before. My son was being disciplined for defending himself. And I was on my way to check him out of the school when my son texted me there was a shooter going on. I just got done telling it that they're just raising a passive society. They're burger flippers, And
yeah, and I think
yourself, where would you want to go?
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And it kind of adds to the whole situation when nobody stands up for the individual. It's the kind of passive thing. Oh, just let him get bullied or whatever, and then nobody stands up and he feels isolated.
And that's what's happening a lot, I think. They can't defend themselves, but the ones that are hitting them or bullying them, they're getting away with it. I feel like they're being more protected.
Hey, well, God bless you guys. God bless your son too, and I hope you guys are able to, make it out of this all right. Thank you guys for commenting today. All right, so we're gonna keep talking to people out here. What's up? Okay, we're going to.
Let YouTube know about the sound again.
All right, yeah. So once again, if you're listening to us on YouTube and you're having trouble hearing us, you need to switch over to the Alex Jones Facebook channel because the YouTube audio is going through the phone. The Facebook live broadcast is coming out of the microphone. So if you're having audio problems, you just need to switch from YouTube over to the Alex Jones channel, and you'll get the audio from this, which is where the best audio will obviously be when we start covering the actual Vigil when it gets started here in about 15 minutes. I want to keep talking to people out here because we've had some pretty good conversations. I'd like to talk to these individuals out here. How you guys doing out here? Are you guys, do your kids go to the school today, sir?
Yes.
These are your kids right here? Would you guys mind answering some questions? It's all right. Did you guys go to school today?
Yeah. Yes.
What do you think about today? Is it still in your head, or was it like a normal day, or was it really weird?
It was still in our head today.
Still thinking about it? Did you have any friends that witnessed this horrible tragedy?
Yeah. No. One of my friends was stuck in front of the high school all morning for 30 minutes, and she saw everything, so she was really sad.
So are you guys out here to just, stand together as a community and honor the victims today?
Yeah, really. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much for being out here. God bless you guys. And what do you think, as a parent, needs to be done? What do you think is the quickest, easiest thing that can be done to protect children in schools?
I don't think there is an easy fix for it. I mean, it's going to take people coming together like this.
Yeah, that's a good point. If everybody knew one another and viewed each other as brothers, something like this would probably never happen.
Catch it before it happens.
Yeah. All right, sir. Hey, God bless you. Thank you for talking to us today. So yeah, we've heard some good points, that you kind of don't hear normally. Like, we need to have a more, faith-based society so that people don't have these evil intentions, or we need to have a more closely knit community so that we can identify problem situations, or so that people don't look at each other and say, I don't know you, or I don't like you, or I don't care about you. Well, that's not how you feel about your brother. Even if you fight with your brother, well, I guess, you could go back to Cain and Abel, but, even if you get in a fight, if you feel like you know somebody and you love that individual, you don't want harm to come to them, even if you may disagree on a subject matter or something like that, or a silly argument at school. So, these are interesting solutions that you really just don't hear. You really just don't get that because it doesn't really fit anyone's agenda. It doesn't really fit anybody's narrative. It's just like, hey, let's come together and let's try to avoid this from happening by just coming together as people and loving one another more. So, sir, you mind answering some questions? Did you have a student at the school today, or what brought you out here?
Not at the high school. My daughters here go to junior high, and as a family and community, we all stand together and we stand as one. And right now, our community's hurting. So
it seems to me that that's been a major thing, is that people just come out here just to show support because the community is so tight knit. Would you say that's the case?
Very. I mean, we stand strong. We got a lot of questions out there that want to be answered as well. I believe there's a lot of things that can be done now to change up what happened, make things a little better. But right now, we're just a community. We're hurting, and we're just going to stand together, rally together. As you can see, we're one big family here in this town, and we stick together.
And you're going to eventually have to send your daughter back to school. This is going to be running through your mind. What do you think is the quickest, easiest solution to try to stomp this out?
There's a lot to be put on the table. It's not just one thing to stomp it out. My main concern is safety for our kids. The PD did very well today for the action time that they came in and did their job. And again, there's not too much we would change. We just need a little bit more things safety-wise for the doors. We believe that they need to be protected for our children. Okay. But as a community, like I said, we're here to stand together.
All right, hey, well, thank you for commenting. God bless you, sir. All right, so it looks to me that they're starting to do some microphone tests here, and the vigil may be getting started here in about 10 minutes. We can talk to some more individuals that are out here. But, it seems to me, other than the hater that we had to deal with, it seems to me that everybody here is kind of on the same page. We want to come together as a community. We want to support one another. And if we are going to talk about solutions, if we are going to talk about addressing the problem, then let's actually do something that makes sense, and let's think about safety. You know, let's think about being proactive instead of reactive. So that seems to be a common thought that I'm hearing out here right now. But we'll continue to talk to more people out here, as you can see that more people are gathering. You've got a couple hundred people out here at this point, and we'll just continue to talk to people. So here, come with me. Excuse me, sir. Do you mind answering a couple questions? Not right now. I'm sorry. That's all right. That's all right. Yep. So as you can see, folks, people are still getting the bad news. I mean, that's how, sadly, you know, how serious this situation is, where you had people that even till now at almost 5:30, hours after this happened, just now finding out. So that man that I just tried to talk to was in tears, and he said he just got some bad news. So he just figured out at 5:20, hours after this happened, probably that, you know, somebody he loves maybe lost their life. So that just shows you what the people that had to go into that scene and, you know, get the bodies out and measure everything up and figure out who is who and what is what, you know, just how much carnage was there, that even hours later, people still don't have answers. People still don't know where their kids are. People still don't know if their mothers or aunts or uncles made it out safely. Where I just tried to talk to an individual who just found out literally right now about something, and that drew him to tears, and he couldn't speak to us. So I don't blame him. But again, that really just shows you. Imagine it takes hours. You know, even if it's just 10 bodies and 10 more, it takes hours just to figure out what is going on. So a lot of the people out here are still searching for answers, just basic answers like, did my friend, did my son, did my daughter even make it out safely? So a lot of people may be finding these answers out while we're here at the Vigil, and you know, that's going to be tough, I think. But the community is here to support them, so that's one positive aspect of this. Here. I think they're about to start the prayer too. Here, let's see if we can't get closer.
Microphone check.
Excuse me. Just wanna...
I was hoping we could hear the prayer, but it looks like his microphone is too far away from the person praying for us to be able to hear these. What you're seeing now is the people of Santa Fe, Texas, gathering together and bowing their heads before God.
All right, so the crowd has fallen silent here as it looks like the vigil is about to begin.
All right, let's go ahead and break now. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back with our Rimas after this. Back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 19th, 2018, ninth year of Cheongi, fourth month and fifth day by the heavenly calendar. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Moon. And this morning, we're dealing with this very sad situation that happened in Texas yesterday, in Santa Fe, Texas, at the Santa Fe High School, where 10 students were killed, and 10 people killed and 10 injured. One of the worst, or perhaps the worst, school shooting in the history of Texas schools. And we showed a video before the break, during the first hour, of the Infowars reporter going there on the scene and interviewing people, and he did an excellent job of doing that. Really, it's the kind of journalism that we want to see. That's real journalism. And he did it in a very sensitive way as well. You know, sometimes reporters can be very insensitive in these kinds of situations. You know, oh, your child was just shot to death. Tell us how you feel. What thoughts are going through your mind right now? That kind of thing. But no, this he didn't do that. This young reporter was very sensitive, but also very probative as well. It's very difficult to strike that balance in these kinds of situations of tragedy, but he did a very good job. I think Infowars should be commended for having such a talented young man on its staff. But the problems that the people that the issues that the people that he interviewed brought up are very thought-provoking. And especially the young black man that we saw it in the beginning, where he said, you cannot prevent these kinds of things, but we can be prepared for when they happen. And that is true. You know, every place that these things take place, the common thing that we hear is, oh, we never would have expected this kind of a thing to happen here. That's what we hear, I think, every time. So that means that none of us are immune from this kind of a tragedy. You know, I've told you about the man that called me up on the phone around the time of the February 28th event and tried to tell me that I should not think of defending myself or my family or my community with an AR-15 because no one is ever going to attack you with an AR-15. Now, he didn't know me. This man didn't know me. You know, I was he just dialed the church's number and I happened to answer the phone. He has no idea of who I am or where I live or what my family is like or what my neighbors are like. But he just said, you know, you shouldn't own an AR-15 because no one's ever going to attack you with an AR-15. Well, in this case, it was not an AR-15. It was a shotgun and a pistol, a revolver. But the point is that none of us can say that. None of us can say it will never happen here. None of us will be able to do that. So we have to be prepared. And that is why, you know, as one of the parents was saying, he was saying, oh, arm everybody, arm everybody. Well, I don't know about arming everybody. You know, as the chief said, you don't want to arm all the teachers because some of the teachers, they may actually give their gun to the bad guy. So here, take my gun. Or are you out of bullets? Here, take my gun. Is what the chief was warning us. So you don't want to give firearms to all the teachers or allow all the teachers to carry firearms in the school, but those who are sheepdogs. Those who are sheepdogs. You don't want to give firearms to the sheep, all right? Because the sheep will give the firearms to the wolves. But you want to give firearms to the sheepdogs. And if you want to talk about mental health, that would be a good place to apply mental health. You know, those people who have who are psychologically ready to defend their students at the risk of their own lives. No, veterans, for example, would be a good pool of manpower from which to recruit these kinds of people. And, you know, law enforcement, former law enforcement, these kinds of people as well. People who have seen combat. People who have had the experience of moving forward towards the fire instead of running away from it. That guy in Broward County, Florida, you don't want him. You don't want people like him. You want people who have experience in live fire situations and are able to, who have been tested, who are able to do what needs to be done in those situations. But also, obviously the family, I don't know what this kid's family was like, but I suspect it was not a healthy family. So we want to deal with that as well. If you want to do prevention, that's where prevention can take place. All right, let's look at our Rhema for this morning. I thought this morning would be a good time to go back to the verse that the king often quotes, the two verses, that is Revelation 20, chapter 20, verses 7 and 8. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan will be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And what I've heard the king talk about in terms of these two verses is that evil is going to be around for a long, long time. We cannot legislate it away, as the man in the overalls told us in that video clip. But also, it's not enough for us to just say, we all have to go to Jesus Christ, and then everything will be solved. Well, in theory, that is true. But as we can see, because God gives us the ability to choose, He gave Adam and Eve the ability to choose, and He gives us the ability to choose. He gives us the ability to choose evil. He gives us the ability to hate Him. He gives us the ability to wound Him, to wound His heart. He is a God who feels pain, who feels sorrow, and He gives us the ability to cause Him sorrow. And that is evil. But God gives us that ability for a reason, because He wants us to choose good. He gives us that ability because He wants us to choose good on our own. On our own. Because it is only then that we truly love God, and it is only then that we are truly qualified to be the sons and daughters of God. Truly qualified to be the sons and daughters of God. When we choose good, even when evil seems more attractive, even when the option for evil is there, it is available, it seems more attractive, at least in the short run, but we say no to it, and we choose good. That is when we can truly become sons and daughters of God. But even after 1,000 years, there will still be people who will choose evil. Because we have that ability, God will not take it away. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a literal 1,000 years, because in biblical time is sometimes, often, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day is like 1,000 years. So I don't know what the actual timeline is going to be. But the point here is that the evil is going to be with us for a long, long time. So as the African-American student in the blue shirt said, we cannot prevent it. We cannot prevent evil completely. We cannot just shut down evil. God cannot shut down evil, and we certainly cannot shut down evil. But we can be prepared for it. We can be prepared for when it happens. And that's where our emphasis has to be. That's where our emphasis has to be. And that's why the king is teaching us jiu-jitsu and firearms training and Muay Thai and what is the Philippine, I can never pronounce it, the Philippine knife fighting arts. He's teaching us all these arts, but also the mental capacity. The mental preparedness is also necessary for us to be able to deal with evil when we come face to face with it. when we come face to face with it, not to simply lose our minds and sort of go running like a chicken with its head cut off or something like that, but to think rationally and to remain calm and to do what needs to be done there, to face evil and to dominate evil. That is a mental training, I think, also that we have to go through. And so those videos that the King is showing us on Active Self-Protection channel on YouTube, those are very useful. They've been very useful to me in that sense. Where we see people in different situations suddenly, unexpectedly, and randomly coming face to face with evil and seeing how they deal with it, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully. Sometimes the good guy gets killed in those videos. Often, actually, it happens. So that we can go through those scenarios in our own minds and say, okay, what would I do? What would I do if I were ever faced with that kind of a situation? What would I do? What would I do if I were in Walmart one day and I start hearing shots going off? What would I do? Will I pull out my weapon and go running towards the shots? As one man did and got himself killed? What would I do? That's something that each of us can think about. And the more we think about these scenarios, the more prepared we will be, I think, when it actually, or if, and chances are, I as an individual, chances are, I will never face that kind of situation during the remainder of my life. But I can never say that I will never face it. And so I need to be prepared. And each person needs to be prepared to face that kind of situation, if and when it happens. There was a post by one of our sisters. Can the tech team go to, well, I guess not. No, I just remembered she actually restricted the privacy on that post. But one of our sisters, since she restricted the privacy, I will not name her, but actually in the last few days, she was in a mall in the United States, and there were reports of an active shooter. Turns out no one was actually shot. But the whole place went into lockdown, and she and a bunch of other people were in some confined space for an hour while the police were going through. But she is a part of our community, and she said that because of the training that she's received from the King, she was able to remain calm, and she was able to help people around her. I'm trying to find it right now, but it's not coming up immediately. I read this post last night. So already that is the kind of mental training that we have received from the King, and I think that's a very wonderful thing. She was not carrying her firearm. She was not carrying her firearm on her, and so as a result of this experience, she said that she will definitely start carrying her firearm wherever she goes from now on, because she had that. I don't know if you call it a close call, but well, it turned out not to be. I guess it turned out not to be an actual active shooter situation, but it was kind of a drill, I guess, or it wasn't actually a drill, but that was the effect of it. She thought it was an active, and the police thought it was an active. It was not an actual drill. The police thought it was an active shooter situation. It turned out to be a false alarm, but she had the opportunity to be tested and to understand the value of the training that she has been receiving, even long distance. She's not in this Northeast Pennsylvania community, but even long distance she's been receiving this training. And so she was very grateful to the King for that. And grateful to God for the reminder that she should start carrying her firearm with her. All right, let's go to our Rima in the Cheonseongyong. I'm in the book on life of true filial piety. In the English, it's a 222, 4 twos, 2222. If the tech team can bring that up. This is the chapter 7, Life of True Filial Piety, book 14, chapter 7, God and True Parents, and section 1, True Parents are the model of loyalty and and filial piety. These are words that were spoken in 1960, which I found surprising because of something that I see in the first sentence here. We might call Jesus the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, or the main representative of the absolute being. So this was in April 1960 that he spoke these words. And anyway, I always hated when the English tries to sort of back away from the Korean, you know, and the word might. I don't know why they put the word might in there. Because Korean certainly does not have any kind of conditional nuance like that. It says we speak of, not we speak, we might. But we speak of Jesus as the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the main representative of the absolute being. However, there is no one who can stand before him and be blessed with the title of loyal subject or patriot. Please understand this: no loyal subject, filial son, or virtuous woman of heaven has yet emerged. He's speaking in 1960. This will be just after the holy wedding with Hak Jahan. If there is a person who has absolute faith, God would want to bless him and set him up in the highest position from which he could rule heaven and earth. For that to be so, he should be called the most loyal subject and most filial child. And since the believers are called his brides, they have to gain the title of the most virtuous women. God has conducted his providence of restoration for 6,000 years, but he has been unable to bless anybody, saying, "You are my most loyal subject without equal in all of history," or "You are truly the filial son that I have been wanting since Genesis." Nor has he been able to bless anyone as his virtuous daughter. Yes. None of the world's nations have become the country possessing the sovereignty that God could designate as his own. None of its families have become the family having true parents whom God could love and protect eternally, nor has anyone on earth been able to become the true bride or groom whom God could trust eternally. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this Rima this morning. Life of true filial piety. All right, let's take a break, and a short break, and we will get back into the news after this.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
All polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, model 27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right.
341. I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about what 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum. But it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
Welcome back to the King's Report for this rainy Saturday here in northeast Pennsylvania. And it's a sad Saturday nationwide because of the events in Santa Fe, Texas yesterday morning at the Santa Fe High School. It's sad because of what happened. It's sad because as a society we still have not made we have still not come to the consensus that we need to protect our children. We protect our presidents with guns. We protect our politicians and our various other business leaders with guns. Hollywood celebrities surround themselves with guns. Reporters who criticize guns and call for gun control work out of buildings that are protected by armed guards. The only ones who are left vulnerable, are the children in our schools. I don't get it. Do you get it? I just don't get it. What is so special about our schools that we think that there's some kind of a energy field that's going to protect them? With one of these, Star Wars or Star Trek energy fields where, you touch it and a bad guy touches it and sort of has to stand back or something like that. It's just, like I said, there's something spiritual going on here when people cannot understand that we need to protect our children, that we need to be prepared for evil when it happens, that we cannot prevent evil, but we need to be prepared for it when it happens. That young black man said, he said something incredibly important there. Anyway, here on Infowars, shock study major depression diagnoses spiked 33% since 2013. Now I read that headline and immediately I'm a little bit skeptical. Okay. Now, maybe kids are more depressed. Maybe people are more depressed. Maybe it's 33%. I don't know. But I kind of doubt it because I think the diagnoses is spiking 33%. I think has to do with these psychiatrists and psychologists listen, they can't make money unless they find disease, all right? They can't make money unless they find a disease, So I'm a little bit skeptical. But anyway, let's read this story. What does it say here? It's Infowars. Major depression cases skyrocketed by 33% from 2013 to 2016, according to a study by health insurer Blue Cross Blue Shield Association. Say that 10 times fast. The spike is even more serious for young people with a 47% jump in millennials and a 63% jump in adolescents. See, right there, I'm skeptical. Who are they calling depressed? Is there a objective, measurable standard for depression? No, there isn't. It's, have you been sad during the last 2 weeks? This kind of thing, Have you thought about doing harm to yourself or others, and this kind of thing? There's no specific objective standard that they have. Numbers, okay, if this person is a 6.8 or 7.2 or something like that, there is no objective measurable standard for depression. So I'm skeptical. You know, we should always be, all of us should be skeptical about everything, you know. Skepticism is a good thing, a healthy amount anyway. The high rates for adolescents and millennials could have a substantial health impact for decades to come, BCBSA Chief Medical Officer Trent Haywood said in a press release. Overuse of social media and electronics may be a contributing factor in the elevated depression rates. Okay, I can see that. It is possible that the increased rates of depression in adolescents are related to a combination of increased electronic use and sleep disruptions in already vulnerable individuals, said Dr. Karen Horowitz, a psychiatrist affiliated with the Emma Pendleton Bradley Hospital in Rhode Island. But see, if she weren't finding a disease, she wouldn't be making all that money. So increased use of electronics, video games more commonly in boys, and social media texting more commonly in girls can lead to increased conflict both within the home and with peers. The study also found higher rates of social isolation among individuals who used social media more often. Well, that's true. You know, alienation is in the 1960s, there was a lot of talk about how urbanization results in alienation. In other words, people who live in cities are more lonely than people who live in rural areas, even though people live in cities are surrounded by more people. This was something that was being taught back in the 60s. And sort of as an extension of that, you could say that people who have, like for example, I have 3,000 plus friends on my Facebook. I actually know about 10 of them. No, maybe 50. Not 50. Anyway, maybe 50. Yeah. But in my case, I don't really consider those 3,000 people to be friends. They're contacts. I mean, I don't allow Facebook to brainwashing me into thinking that I have 3,000 friends. Like on my telephone, I might have 1,000 contacts or something like that. And many of them I have not called in 5 or 6 years. But, they're contacts. And just in case someday they call me, their name will pop up on the caller ID and I'll know who it is. And sometimes that happens. And same with Facebook. You have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 friends, and they won't let you have more than 5,000. Those are not friends. They're contacts. Right? They're contacts. But some people, young people, want to think of them as friends, and so they're in this kind of a virtual urban environment, in the sense that a lot of people are concentrated together. It's a virtual online urban environment, online urbanism. That's an interesting thought. But there's increased alienation, just as there was when there was increased physical urbanization. So yeah, I can see how that can lead to loneliness and despair and so forth, or not despair, but loneliness and depression. Let's see. In preliminary literature, high users of social media have been linked with higher rates of social isolation than low users, Haywood added. It is important to further explore this relationship. In 2017, Facebook admitted its users reported feeling worse about themselves after using its platform for only 10 minutes. Use it for 9 minutes, all right? Additionally, former Facebook President Sean Parker even asserted last year that the tech company exploits psychological vulnerabilities in its users to make it more addictive, saying, God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. I'm sure, yes, that is true, that God only knows. Yes. So, do Facebook, but keep it real, as they say these days. Keep it real and have real friends and interact with real friends through such activities as jiu-jitsu or firearms training or hiking, and get a healthy dose of nature. Get a healthy dose of nature. That's the way I think to keep things real and to avoid this kind of feelings of alienation and melancholy and depression, and to have some school psychologist write you off as depressed. Come on. Here's an article here. Infowars here on their list of, I think, what is it, the list of most popular, something like that. Let's go back to the Santa Fe shooting here. Trench coat worn by Santa Fe school shooter shows both communist and Nazi symbols. Not to mention the pentagram, right? Let's just see what it says here. A photo of the trench coat that Santa Fe gunman, I'm not so going to say his name, allegedly wore during this morning's school shooting shows both communist and Nazi symbols. At least 10 students are dead. We know about that. Images that appeared on his Facebook page before it was deleted include one of the trench coat he was wearing during the attack, which shows badges for both the communist hammer and sickle and the Nazi Iron Cross. Now there's the pentagram as well. Yeah, there's the pentagram as well, on his pocket there. Yeah. And this man attempted to explain the meaning of the symbols in the caption to the post, writing, "Duster, hammer, and sickle equals rebellion, rising sun. Kamikaze tactics, Iron Cross, bravery, Baphomet." See there? Baphomet. He wasn't just casually wearing that pentagram. He knew what it meant. He knew that this was a Satan symbol, that this had to do with Satan. He said, bravery, Baphomet, equals evil, who equals power. Power, you see, this is what Satan promises you. He promises you power. But that's false power. Power comes from God. A T-shirt emblazoned with the words "Born to Kill" was also uploaded to the man's Facebook feed. Other photos show a handgun, a knife, and a torch resting on a bed, as well as a toy knife attached to an arcade video game. It is important to emphasize that these photos have not been confirmed as being posted by this man, but they are circulating on social media and being widely reported by the media. According to reports, this man was bullied by other students and a teacher, despite being a celebrated member of the Santa Fe Indians football team. Well, just because you're on the football team doesn't mean that you're not going to be bullied. I mean, what was he? Was he a starter? Was he, was he on the bench the whole time? If you're on the bench the whole time, then you might be bullied. I mean, if you're not good enough that you're actually going to be put into the game, you could be bullied. That's certainly possible. All right? And bullied by a teacher. That happens. That happens too. That happened in the past, it happens now, and it's going to happen in the future. Kids have to be able to deal with that. That's part of learning how to deal with the things in the world. I had a teacher in high school where, sometimes the girls in our class would leave the class in tears because he would berate them, and I mean, they would. It was a kind of a discussion class, and a girl would say something, and he would go on for about 5 or 10 minutes about how stupid she was to say such a thing. And I mean, I more than once I saw a girl leave that class in tears. That was a bully, but we never had a school shooting, though, that's for sure. All right. I'm just saying that those bullies existed 50 years ago when I was in high school, and they're going to exist now, and they're going to exist in the future. And there's nothing that we can do that will completely get rid of that kind of situation of bullies. But what we can do is educate and train our children to be able to handle such situations. Okay. Actually, I once stood up to that teacher, and as a result, earned his respect. And many years later, when he was on his deathbed, he called me. He was not just me, but apparently he was tracking down a lot of his former students, or a few of them anyway. And I was one of the ones that he chose to track down and sort of talk to me. He wanted to talk to me one last time before because he knew he was going to die. So that can happen too. That can happen too. Yeah. When you stand up to a bully, they suddenly respect you. Okay, let's go back to the Drudge Report. Start going through the headlines, a few more of the headlines before we break for the 7 o'clock hour. Let's see. We were at the Istanbul summit urges international force to protect Palestinians. And let's see. Okay, yes, we were at the Hawaii residence. A look for normalcy amid ash and lava. Trump promises to sign prison reform bill that could free thousands. Yeah, well, let's get into that later on. Maduro seeks second term in isolated, ruined Venezuela. We'll see how well he does there. Of course, Maduro. These dictators. They fixed the election. Okay, so the ballot boxes come pre-stuffed. By the time the polls open, there are already lots of ballots in the boxes. or they pay off the guys who count, And on the one hand, they're counting 1, 2, 3. Over here, they're counting 10, 20, 30. They've got various ways. They've got various ways of fixing the elections. I mean, of course, we laugh about it, but remember Chicago in the 60s with Richard Daley, Mayor Richard Daley. He was famous for fixing elections. Boy. But these people, they know. I mean, fixing elections is a highly developed science. So if a dictator runs for a second term, he's probably going to get it. Muslims forced to booze and eat pork in China re-education camps. Yeah, let's look at that later on too. Top Paris restaurant probed after anti-Arab discrimination. Oh boy. Summer bummer, disease outbreaks linked to hotel pools. Wow. New Facebook data leak exposes intimate details of millions. Don't put your stuff on Facebook. Yeah. Watch out. Just, when, they have these various security levels and privacy levels and stuff like that, but I just assume that everything that I put on Facebook is going to be known by everybody. So I, for that reason, I limit the information that I put on Facebook. Trump DOJ out to frame me. Okay, Giuliani escalates effort to erode legitimacy of Mueller probe. Special counsel subpoenas another Roger Stone aide. And Sullivan, a man named Sullivan, says Obama legacy already destroyed. Well, I think that's a good thing. Others might think it's a bad thing. Jay-Z talks rapper out of White House visit. They were going to talk about prison reform, I think. I don't know why he didn't go to do that. P. Diddy, that's the important thing. Well, I want to go into this prison reform article in a few minutes, but America has the highest, per population, has the highest prison population in the world. We incarcerate a higher percentage of our population than any country in the world. Think about that. P. Diddy revealed as buyer of $21 million painting. New York art sales near $3 billion as uber-rich hunt trophies. Mugshots.com owners arrested for extortion. Radiation from power lines, Wi-Fi poses credible threat to wildlife. Well, what about if it poses credible threat to wildlife? What about us? Things are being said about 5G. Storm chasing tours become big and risky business. A study, people who live in small towns, rural areas are happier. Hey, we're happy. Thank you. I can see how that's true because there's in small towns there's less alienation. Like I said, in urban areas there's more alienation. Inside final days of Analytica, failed rebrands of fleeing clients. Yeah, that data firm. Pregnant women, service dog punched on frontier flight. Boy. And royals gathering for wedding. Actually, our broadcast this morning is competing with the royal wedding. I don't know how many people are watching us, and maybe everybody's watching the royal wedding right now. I think it's being broadcast live on whatever channel, even as we are doing this broadcast now. Thank you for those who have pulled themselves away from the royal wedding to watch the King's Report live this morning. The troubled playboy grows up. Marco won't promise to obey. Update, more than 100 killed in Cuba airliner crash. Normally that would be big news, but we have so many other big news items this morning that's kind of been pushed down. Stormy Daniels' show ends after drunk man throws wallet in her face. Well, it was a show. I think other headlines, which I've not read these stories of, but it was actually a striptease show. She's really cashing in on her notoriety. I don't know why Drudge sort of toned it down by just saying show. I think she was taking her clothes off. Cohen attorneys accuse Avenatti of professional misconduct. Avenatti is Stormy Daniels' lawyer. Mexico presidential frontrunner vows to hit back at Trump tweets. Spy devices tracking phones, intercepting calls from all over D.C. Website flaw exposed most mobile real-time locations. Website flaw, yeah, right. Like it was an accident. Trailer crazed alcoholic puppets terrorized L.A. in Happy Time murders. Crazed alcoholic puppets terrorized L.A. Okay. It's a trailer. I guess that's a movie. A Playboy playmate took young son on fatal leap from New York City hotel. Toxic marriage custody battle. Stylist throws man through window after haircut complaint. Yeah. Don't complain about your haircut. It'll grow out. Don't worry. It'll grow out. Won't take more than a couple of weeks. Better than being tossed through the window. All right. Let's look at a couple of stories before the break. Let's look at the upper left-hand headlines. Drudge thinks they're important. This thing about no, it's a Washington Post story. No, let's not do that. Let's go down to the prison reform. Prison reform. Oh, here we go. Prison reform, because that's something that has not been talked about a lot, but needs to be focused on much more. This is who wrote this? This is from The Guardian, and it's written by a reporter in New Orleans. For some reason, the Trump promised to sign prison reform bill that could free thousands. The bill, which could immediately release 4,000 federal prisoners, is likely to be brought up for a vote early next week. Donald Trump on Friday promised to sign bipartisan prison reform legislation currently working its way through Congress that could free thousands of prisoners. My administration strongly supports these efforts, and I urge the House and Senate to get together, work out their differences, and get a bill to my desk. I will sign it, Trump said at an event the White House described as a prison reform summit. Trump called prison reform an issue that unites people from across the spectrum, as he thanked progressive commentator Van Jones and his son-in-law and senior advisor Jared Kushner for their involvement in pushing for the bill. The package, which would immediately release 4,000 federal prisoners, according to some advocates, passed the House Judiciary Committee last week and is likely to be brought up for a vote early next week. The bill would also expand compassionate release, giving elderly and terminally ill inmates a path home, and invest tens of millions in reentry programs. It would also end the shackling of women giving birth behind bars and provide them with necessary hygiene items at no charge. Trump did not address the majority of the bill's provisions in his remarks, focusing mostly on the elements that deal with recidivism and reentry. Nobody wins when former prisoners fail to adjust to life outside or worse, end up back behind bars, Trump said. Well, I mean, what's bad is that prisons are basically workshops or training camps for criminals. They go in there and they exchange information. I did this and I goofed up there, and the next time I'm going to do it this way, and oh yeah, wow, yeah, and also, hey, there's this kind of a scam that you can do. People go in there as maybe for a very innocuous offense, and come out trained criminals. We want former inmates to find a path to success so they can support their families and support their communities. Even if it passes the House, the bill faces an uphill climb in the Senate, not because there isn't support for it, but because key lawmakers feel the bill does not go far enough. Unlike prior attempts at federal prison legislation, which also would have relaxed criminal sentencing, especially on drug crimes, the current bill only deals with policies that affect people who are already incarcerated. For any criminal justice reform proposal to win approval in the Senate, it must include sentencing reforms, the Republican Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley said in a statement last week. Grassley was one of the chief animating forces behind a much more comprehensive bill that had been building momentum on both sides of the aisle in 2016. That would be under Obama, but that essentially disappeared from view after Trump's surprise victory. But advocates like Jessica Jackson Sloan, the policy director for Cut 50, I see. So that earlier bill was being prepared for Hillary, so that she could bask in some kind of praise. But she lost, and so they said, "Oh well, forget about it. Never mind." But advocates like Jessica Jackson Sloan, the policy director for #Cut50, a criminal justice reform advocacy group, are hoping to get lawmakers to see the bill called the First Step Act as just that. And I am disappointed we can't solve all our problems in one bill. Of course, Jackson Sloan told The Guardian, but the fact that we are able to introduce a bipartisan piece of criminal justice legislation at this point in 2018 under these political circumstances is a huge thing that should be celebrated. It is progress, and it is the first step. Kushner, who was tasked with criminal justice reform early on in the administration, also championed the appeal of incremental reform. He noted that for years, the two reform issues, sentencing and prison, have been bound together and nothing has been passed. The reason why this thing was stuck is because of sentencing reform. So we as an administration said, let's focus on prison reform, Kushner said. Over time, that might help the people who are arguing for sentencing reform. Reform advocates like Andrea James are not convinced. James is the founder of and executive director of the National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women. They have a national council? Wow, okay. And she said her organization could not support the bill as currently written because it did not assist a large enough segment of the federal prison population. Anytime we make a decision to oppose anything that could potentially bring even one of our sisters out of confinement in the federal prison system, that decision is incredibly difficult, James said. She worries that restrictions on which prisoners can receive the credits that qualify for early release leave too many people out. Conspiracy, firearm possession during a drug crime, and even computer fraud are some of the convictions that could disqualify an inmate. Conspiracy simply means that, there are, two or more people involved in the same crime. So that's a lot. That covers a lot of people. She also expressed doubt about execution, even for the provisions she supports, given that the Justice Department would be responsible for seeing it through. We don't trust that a Jeff Sessions Justice Department is going to actually implement what is being suggested in this bill, James said. Well, that might be a valid concern. Sessions is interested in, going after marijuana users. And I don't smoke marijuana. I never have smoked marijuana. I don't think that people should smoke marijuana, and I think it's a very bad idea. Having said that, I don't think the federal government should be involved in stopping people from smoking marijuana. If people want to ruin their lives, they should ruin their lives. Of course, No welfare, all right? No welfare for people who ruin their lives on drugs. No tax money. No tax money to those people. But the federal government should not be involved in stopping people from smoking marijuana or taking whatever they want to. You know, what are the kids sniffing these days? Condoms? What? How, I don't get that. I don't want to get that. But anyway, but you know, Sessions is of the mind that the federal government should go after marijuana users. So I can see why this person would be concerned about how the Justice Department might execute this bill. I can see that as well. I can see that very well, yeah. All right, let's take a break now. We'll be back in 5 minutes with more news from a Chattanooga perspective. Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 19th, 2018. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Jin-moon. And this hour, at the beginning of this hour, I want to go to a video on YouTube. I think I may have spoken about this channel before. It's a guy that calls himself on YouTube Maneko64. He does not give us his real name. He claims to have worked in the financial district in London, which is called the City, and he claims to be broadcasting out of London, and he mentions that he'll mention in this video as well that he was born in Brazil, but he is a British citizen, or do they still call themselves citizens now or subjects? Anyway, he's a Brit, and but he gives a lot of good insight. One thing is that he puts these videos up every day, and one purpose of the videos is to go through what's happening in the markets that particular morning. And as he mentions here, some people who watch his channel are not too happy about that and says, hey, we can get that information elsewhere, just give us your insights. But this is still what he wants to do. So I want to play this video, and I think it's about 15 minutes long. Yeah, it's exactly about 15 minutes and 4 seconds long. And the reason I want to play it is that he talks in this video about the scourge of central banks. And he helps us to understand why central banks are outlawed in the Cheongguk Constitution. He talks about central banks being the centralization of power. The centralization of power, anyway, we'll get into it, and he gives some good historical insight, both in terms of how the Central Bank of England developed, and also the central banks of the U.S. There were some in the 19th century. And then the second Bank of the United States, of course, was as has been mentioned before on this channel, was put out of business by Andrew Jackson in 1836 or 7. I thought it was 36. He says 37. And then from that time, from the 1830s until 1913, the United States did not have a central bank. But then in 1913, we got a central bank, and the rest is history. Anyway, let's play this video, and I may stop it somewhere during the time to talk about some of the points that he makes. Please go ahead and start the video.
17th, 2018, Maneko64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. I'm going to touch up on a subject that I talk a lot about, but I think it's really important, and as I get more and more viewers and more subscribers, I need to keep refreshing on about it. I think it's the most important topic right now. It's not QAnon, it's not geopolitics, it's not Trump, it's not Brexit, it's central banking. Central banking is the biggest instrument of oppression, enslavement, of war, and we really need to get rid of it. We need to go to a free market, rule of law, common law system. We don't need people to control our lives, especially the commodity that is used to indirectly exchange goods, services, and labor. We need to let it be done naturally and organically. And not even, there are some people who criticize central banking. I was just looking at a book that I've read. They get what central banking has done, but then they propose something like state banking. And I'm sorry, don't agree with that either. And that's why as well, I think the blockchain and cryptocurrencies are a real threat to the people who basically have been in power since 1694, I would say, when the monarchy in England gave the Bank of England a royal charter and gave it a monopoly. And I'll show it to you that what we have now, even in the UK, in the US, and everywhere, is not freedom. God is communism, and it's really simple to see it. I'll get to that later.
Stop there.
Some of you have said that they don't So, want to listen to the early market.
Yeah. So he mentions that what we have now is not freedom but communism, and this is what the king has been warning about. That of course Hillary, Obama, and the Democratic Party, and of course the elites in the U.S. and Europe, the Rothschilds have all been trying to centralize power, centralize power. Remember, global problems require global solutions, and therefore we have to have a global governance. We have to have a top-down global governing structure. The United Nations has to be that. We all have to bow down to the United Nations, this kind of thing. This is what, and this man refers to that as communism. Yeah, communism is not the workers' paradise. Well, I don't want to preempt him, but he'll get into the 1848 Communist Manifesto in just a minute. I'll stop it again there to talk about that. Go ahead.
Report when I go over where the markets are, but I think a lot of you like that. And I know recently the markets haven't been doing much, so it seems boring, but I'll still go over it.
That's and let's just go ahead and listen to what he says about the markets. It won't last very long. Don't worry.
My channel. And the other thing I would say, I am earning more, of course, than I used to, censored, with these kinds of subjects that I think are really important, not just to you, but to everyone else. If you could help donating, it would help the channel. So there's links below in the description. If you
want to go to the channel, it's Monaco64, MONECO64.
So quickly over the markets. I'm not going to not do the markets. To me, right now, the most important thing in these central bank controlled markets is the 10-year yield in the U.S. It's the price of money. And it's the benchmark price of money for the whole world. I know European rates are not as high, and they're kind of under control, but the 10-year yield right now is at 3.11. So I worked in these markets. That was the whole of my professional life. I covered government bond markets. So in 2 days to go from just below 3% to 3.11 is a big move in the 10 years. So yeah, we're 3.11. We're making a new high today. It's been 3.12. So we're up 2 basis points. And the curve is steepening now, not flattening, because the 2 years at 259 right now, which makes it 52, the spread. We were around 40.
He'll get through this in just a minute. Well, let's continue to watch it.
So the curve is actually steepening. Gold, yeah, 1288.60. Not concerned about it either.
Gold is down about $50 an ounce.
If you want even more precious metals and silver and even
last couple of weeks,
cryptocurrencies, you need to do your homework as well about what the blockchain is and what cryptocurrencies are. And don't trust me. Trust yourself. Do your own homework. Silver did well yesterday, and the low the other day was just below 1620. Right now we're at 1635. So yeah, maybe this is encouraging. I know it's been frustrating. The Dow is down 26, 24,716.
You'll get through this.
Notice how I said a few days ago we needed to get back above 25,000. That was like the 50% retracement of the move from the high this year to the low, and we haven't been able to. I'm sure they're trying hard to keep the Dow, elevated despite these yields. They're trying to tell people yields are going up because the economy is doing well, but it's going to be really, 70% of the US economy is based on consumer credit. And if interest rates are going up, everything is going to go up. All the costs of everything is going to make everything more expensive. We're going to have stagflation. The S&P is down 4 points. The NASDAQ is down 1/3%, down 24 points. NASDAQ futures, 100 futures. Currency-wise, the pound is a bit stronger this morning. Actually, it's quite volatile. I haven't seen the headlines, but we got up as high as 135.70 in sterling. And now it's 135.08. So
just bear with them.
Yeah,
just a minute.
Quite a big move there. So it's only up 20 pips now, but it was up quite a bit more. It was up almost 100 pips earlier. Euro is unchanged, 118.05 against the dollar, and the dollar is a bit stronger against the yen, 110.54, up 0.13%. Crude oil continues to do, is moving up here. You got crude oil rising, 71.80, it's up 0.5%. So you got oil going up. Maybe the commodities are going to start to go up. Maybe that white silver is performing relatively well in relation to gold. So that's it for the market. I'll go now.
This is the important part.
Central banking and communism. I think I'm going to go through here. It's from laissez-faire-republic.com. I'll put the link below in the description. And it's the 10 Planks of the Communist Manifesto, 1848, by Karl Heinrich Marx. Good old Karl Marx. Plank number 1, abolition of private property in land and application of all rents of land to public
So here, stop it for just a minute.
Wow.
Okay, so stop it in just a minute. Here he's going to show how...
You see why they want to create housing.
Here he's going to show how the goals of the communist movement. At that time, in 1848, there was not yet a communist party, but it was a communist movement. The goals of the communist movement set out by Karl Marx are actually the goals of the globalists. And this is what he's going to explain here, that there is this direct tie between communism and globalism. And so that's why I think this video is very important for us to watch this morning. Go ahead. Yeah.
Housing bubbles now, so that people are deprived of all their property and then have to start renting. 2, a heavy, progressive, or graduated income tax. Wow. 16th
This is what Karl Marx was calling
US
for.
Constitution 1913. UK, we have heavy, progressive, graduated income tax. Europe, abolition of all rights of inheritance. Wow. Yeah, the inheritance tax in the UK.
That's what Karl Marx
really
wanted.
Heavy.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't apply to everyone, but we've got that. Confiscation of the property of immigrants and rebels, number 4. The most important one to our subject today is number 5, centralization of credit in the hands of the state by means of a national bank with state capital and exclusive monopoly. So, man, and it goes to say here, the Federal Reserve System created by the Federal Reserve Act of Congress in 1913 is indeed such a national bank. That's why when people say we need to reform central banks and make it state-run and not owned by the private bankers, I'm sorry, it's all the same thing. It's centralized. We don't need any centralized banking, be it government or private like we do now. It's all not really conducive to freedom and prosperity and justice and peace, I would say. 6, centralization of the means of communication and transportation in the hands of the state. Wow. Fake news, means of communication, transportation. Yeah, we do have, in a lot of countries in Europe, national railroads. Some of them have been privatized, but they're still heavily, how can I say, regulated by the state. Even in the US, the railroads wouldn't have been built if it wasn't for the state. You know, look at watch the documentary about the West by Robert Redford. The 2 that I think are really important that are present today is number 10 is the free education of all children in government schools, abolition of children's factory labor in its present form. Well, that maybe I agree with, but combination of education with industrial production. So yeah, the education by the government, we have that in the States. They call it public schools. We have that in the UK. That's called state schools. And the kids are brainwashed by the states. they're led to believe they don't look at subjects like central
All right,
banking.
stop it right there.
That it's not.
Stop it right there. Yeah, the king was criticized by the press when, in the interview with Paul Mango, he mentioned that the public schools in America were brainwashing our children with the homosexual political agenda or something like that. And the press went after him for that. But like he said, that's exactly what's happening. That is the purpose of public schools, to educate. But in education, what happens in education is that certain values are being transferred, being handed down. All right. I experienced when my own children were in high school, I would go to these parent-teacher things, that they would have every month or so, and I could see very well that the teachers, they knew I was a Unification Church member, a Mooney, a cult member in their minds, and they were out to save my children from this evil cult. What they were doing, though, was they were handing down to my children their values. And so public schools have as their perceived mission to take children away from the traditional, outdated values held by the parents. Many teachers feel that way, unfortunately. And this was part of Marx's goals. That this is one of the planks of his Communist Manifesto, and that's being, as we can see, as this Monaco 64 guy says, it's being done now in America and in England and in many other countries around the world through public education. All right, let's continue.
Not a good thing, fiat money. So that's just goes to show Communist Manifesto. We thought the West and free markets and freedom won the Cold War, but it doesn't look like it. So what about central banking? Yeah, we need to get away from central banking. How do we do that? Well, I personally think it's through education, through letting people know. That's why I do my videos, but also to how you conduct your affairs. Maybe, not read into, not watch television, not try to be programmed by all the propaganda and all the things you're supposed to do. Oh, I remember in the States in the 80s, there was an advert that said, oh, you can have it all, buy a big house, mortgage yourself. Yeah, live within yourself. Don't, that old saying, never borrow or lender be, is the best policy. And some of you say, oh, but I can't live if I can't buy a place, if I can't, I need a mortgage. Well, I think people need to find ways. I know it's easy for me to say it, but that's all I can say. And what are examples of why are central banks instruments of oppression, war, and inflation? Well, you just have to look at how historically it's happened. The Bank of England, 1694. Before that, you had the Revolution in England, a few years before, and then they brought in the William of Orange from Holland, where they had central banking. A few years later, after he was in power, they get the Bank of England. United States, they tried central banking a couple of times. It was gotten rid of by Andrew Jackson, 1837, and then 1913, they got it back. And what did you get right after that? A war, a major war. And that led to the more and more centralization of the money. Another good example, Of course, there's like examples nowadays of Saddam Hussein, who tried to get away from the dollar, Gaddafi, but one that I really find interesting is because where I grew up in Brazil, and I never realized until I started looking into the question of central banking and money, and is in 1964, which was the year I was born, there was a coup d'etat in Brazil. The CIA, of course, was involved. They got rid of a democratically elected president, Goulart, his name was. He was left-wing. Am I a left-winger? No, but all I'm saying is that the Americans didn't like him. So they got rid of him. And I never realized. And then I went to look into the Central Bank of Brazil, Banco Central do Brasil. And guess when it was created by law? Well, December 31st, 1964. So just a few months after they got rid of democracy, well, not democracy, but elected government in Brazil with the military coup by the CIA, helped by the CIA, they got a new central bank in Brazil. And look what's happened to Brazil since then. I know it wasn't perfect before, but it's in even more and more debt. We've had several currencies since 1964, and Brazil, instead of being a rich, prosperous country, has been a country mismanaged. So there you go. And central banking, yeah, we need to get rid of it. We don't need it. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was an explanation by a person that I don't know exactly who he is, but he seems to be a financial expert. He certainly speaks as though he is one, and I believe he is who he says he is, explaining why central banking is bad. It's a centralization of power. And as he explained, how central banking came to England, it came as a result of bringing William of Orange from Holland, because Holland already had central banking, and so that it was imported to England there. And then in the U.S., the bankers tried to, especially the European bankers, after losing the American colonies, had tried to regain them basically by establishing central banks. Twice it was tried in the early 19th century, and Andrew Jackson sort of got rid of it and refused to renew the charter of the central bank. I believe the decision not to renew the charter happened in 1836, but I think it was actually 1837 when it went out of existence. I think that's how it happened. And from 1837 to 1913, we got along fine. Well, of course there were ups and downs, but got along pretty well without a central bank. Even had a war, a couple of wars. More than that, actually, between 1837, there was the Mexican-American War, there was the Civil War, and there was also the Spanish-American War. But these were also financed without a central bank. And then in 1913, you had the Federal Reserve Act coming into law. And, well, look what happened. And as Monaco 64 said, right after that, you have a big war. But even more importantly, in the 1920s, a bubble was created, a huge financial bubble was created, which resulted in the crash at the end of the 1920s. The crash was actually made worse by and prolonged by the actions of the Federal Reserve, which was the central bank. So this is why the Chunyu Constitution says no central bank. The Constitution says that Congress may not establish a central bank in Chunyu. So it will be a country without a central bank. It will be a country where money is democratized. And Monaco 64 talks about the cryptocurrency and how this is a threat to people who are in power now. And I agree. This is how I've seen it as well. Just as the internet democratized information and continues to democratize information, in other words, allowing us to get information ourselves without having to rely on news media or other third parties to sort of filter and funnel information to us. We're now able to get it ourselves. And I think in a similar way, cryptocurrencies will democratize money, democratize finance. Countries such as Russia, Venezuela, and maybe North Korea, I think, are developing their own cryptocurrencies as a way of getting around U.S. sanctions. And because the dollar is the reserve currency of the world, the U.S. is able to use the dollar as a weapon for its geopolitical goals, which may or may not be righteous goals. You hope that they are righteous goals, but they're not necessarily so. But with cryptocurrency, that ability is threatened. And also, of course, you have the Chinese, of course, threatening the U.S. dollars with the yuan as well. So central banking is unnecessary. And as Monaco 64 said, it is oppression. It is oppression. It is a communist system. We thought that the free world won the Cold War, but it turns out not the case. Not the case. Because we have the worldwide global communist system set up by the elites, in which, by the way, Russia is fighting against, and which, by the way, is why the Democratic Party is just trying to bring down Trump and Russia together. Objectively speaking, Russia is not the greatest threat to America today. China is the greater threat. China is definitely the greater threat to America today. China has set out a goal. Xi Jinping, Emperor Xi, lifetime president for life, Emperor Xi has set out a goal to surpass the United States and become the world's preeminent superpower by 2050. And he is being praised by the Chinese media as being the savior of socialism, the savior of communism. It failed in Russia. The Russians didn't know how to do it. The Cubans didn't know how to do it. The East Germans didn't know how to do it. But Xi Jinping has saved socialism, saved communism. This is what the Chinese official media is saying. And he is even trying to project the model of government, the Chinese government, as a model that can be followed by other countries. There was where he, after one of these shootings, school shootings in the U.S., she was saying the American government should confiscate all guns and defend the rights of the people. That's what they do in China. They take away your guns and they defend your rights, as defined by the Communist Party, as bequeathed to you by the Communist Party of China. Yeah. We believe that rights are natural rights. They come from God and that they're inalienable. Communists don't believe that. Rights come from the Communist Party. And if you are ever found to be an enemy of the people, then you have no rights. You have no rights. Whereas in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Western tradition, even the worst criminal has rights, the right to due process, because even the worst criminal is a child of God. All right, let's take a break now, and we'll come back with more news from a Chonic perspective after this.
Hi there, folks. And look at what I've got here today. My God, take a look at this. This is a BFR in 454 Casull with an octagonal barrel, magna porting, micarta grips. And look at that, it even has my initials on it, JM. Look at that thing of beauty, my God. Pop open the cartridge insertion door, and look at that cylinder spin. The finest revolvers in the world. That's a cannon. That's a cannon. Oh, man. Pretty accurate, though. Target. Oh boy! Massive recoil.
Welcome back to the King's Report for Saturday, May 19th, 2018. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Cheongguk on this rainy, cloudy, cold for this time of year Saturday. But tomorrow I think the weather will be better, and I think we're in for some good weather next week. Let's see how happy we are. This article says that people who live in small towns and rural areas are happier than everyone else, researchers say. You know, the globalists keep trying to concentrate us in urban areas, trying to make it more and more difficult to live, in rural areas by taking away family farms and developing corporate farming and not providing quality internet service to rural areas and things like that. Sort of doing everything they can to encourage people to move to urban areas. But it turns out, hey, we're all happier. This is in my San Antonio. Heaven is wide open spaces. At least it is for most people, according to a massive new data set of happiness in Canada. All right, well, a team of happiness researchers at the Vancouver School of Economics and McGill University recently published a working paper on the geography of well-being in Canada. They compiled 400,000 responses to a pair of national Canadian surveys, allowing them to parse out distinctions in well-being at the level of more than 1,200 communities representing the country's entire geography. They were able to cross-reference the well-being responses with other survey data, as well as figures from the Canadian census, to see what sorts of characteristics were associated with happiness at the community level. Are happier communities richer, for instance? Are the people there more educated? Do they spend more time in church? Their chief finding is a striking association between population density and happiness. When the researchers ranked all 1,215 communities by average happiness, they found that average population density in the 20% most miserable communities were more than 8 times greater than the happiest 20% of the communities. Life is significantly less happy in urban areas, the paper concluded. So all you people in New Jersey and New York, pack up, move here, move across the river. Let me see if I can get to the bottom part of this article. I think there's more to it. Is that all there is? Oh, no, okay, here we go. Yes, I'm happy that there's more. In the region around the city of Toronto, densely populated areas like Toronto, Hamilton, and Kitchener stand out as islands of relative unhappiness in a sea of satisfaction in the hinterlands. The happiness measure is derived from a survey question that asks responses to rate how satisfied they are with their lives on a scale from 1 to 10. Across Canada, community-level average responses to this question range from 7.04 to 8.94. This may not seem like a wide range of difference, but Canadians rarely offer self-assessments outside this range. In a typical year, just 5% of Canadians rate their satisfaction below a 5, for instance. It's useful to think of this narrow spectrum of responses as representing the entire continuum of Canadian happiness. Hence, the study's authors note that even small differences in the absolute score are highly statistically significant. So what makes the happiest communities different from all the rest? Aside from fewer people, the authors found that the happiest communities had shorter commute times and less expensive housing, and that a smaller share of the population was foreign-born. They also found that people in the happiest communities are less transient than in the least happy communities, that they are more likely to attend church, and that they are significantly more likely to feel a sense of belonging in their communities. Okay, there's more, but let's pause there for a minute. I've often sort of wondered, what life would be like in Cheongguk. In the Cheonsonggyong, we've read where Father has said that we cannot really become settled until we have a country. The Father himself was not settled, was he? He was born in North Korea. He studied in Japan. Then he did evangelism in North Korea, then South Korea, and then, of course, then after 1960, he traveled the world. Of course, because of his mission as Messiah, having to, bring God's salvation to all humanity. But in his later years, then he started using words like settlement. Anchak means settlement. Safe settlement. Safe arrival or safe settlement. And in my own life, I have not been settled. I've tried to put down roots a few places, but those roots keep getting pulled up after a while. So it rings very true to me personally when Father says that we cannot really be settled until we have a country. And I think that this is how it will be. Some of these happiness factors here, I think, will apply, I expect, to Cheongguk. Here we go. So less expensive housing, okay. Shorter commute, okay, well, yeah. If you have a small country, then shorter commute. And a smaller share of population was foreign-born. Yeah, we'll have immigration controls in Cheongguk. Because, not everybody has to move into Cheongguk, all right? So don't everybody start packing your bags right now, because you got to, if you're in, Japan or something, then we want you to, God wants you, I'm sure, to bring Japan as a state into Cheongguk as a state. So, but if everybody moves out of Japan, if all the people who understand the principle and know God move out of Japan and try to cram into Cheongguk, then Cheongguk is going to be less happy, for one thing, because you have higher population density. And who's going to save Japan? All right, so please don't think that everyone's going to move to Cheongguk when it happens. At least that would be my opinion. Less transient. See, that's the thing. Families living together. This is really tough in today's society, to keep families together. Our families are not our blood relatives so much as they are, people in our church, for example, or people that we know in our neighborhood, for example. Those are our families, people in the local nonprofit organizations that we may become a member of, people in the whatever organization, whether it be a political party organization, whatever that we become. We're much closer to them than we are to our actual siblings or even our parents who may live on the other side of the country. But in Cheongguk, I think will be less transient and it'll be easier for families to stick together over generations. That's how it used to be. That they are more likely to attend church. All right? It's not going to be a law. Not going to be a law. Not like the Puritans in the early settlements in America. Like you go to prison if you don't go to church. But more likely to attend church. All right, and significantly more likely to feel a sense of belonging in their communities. This is what we talk about in terms of alienation. Alienation occurs when someone moves to the urban area and there's no sense of belonging. You don't know your next door neighbor. You don't know your next door neighbor. Or even if you're in an apartment block, who lives next door to you, who lives above you, who lives below you, don't know any of that. So it's hard to have a sense of belonging. It may seem contradictory, this person says, that greater happiness is correlated with both lower population density, implying fewer interpersonal interactions, and a greater sense of belonging in one's community, implying stronger social connections. I don't think that's contradictory at all. But a significant body of research shows that having a strong social network, not the kind, not the Facebook kind of social network, all right? Not that kind of, but real social network, is key to well-being. Some studies indicate that small towns and rural areas are more conducive than cities to forming strong social bonds, which would explain some of the greater sense of belonging observed in the happiest Canadian communities. Hey, well, why don't they come here and study us? I mean, we could have told them this stuff. They didn't have to spend all that money. Perhaps even more surprising are the factors that don't appear to play a major role in community-level differences in happiness. Average income levels and rates of unemployment and education. People may move to cities for good-paying jobs, but the Canadian study strongly suggests it's not making them any happier. Yeah. So, kids, stay home. Stay with your parents in your rural community. These findings comport with similar studies done in the United States, which have revealed, quote, a rural-urban happiness gradient, unquote. The farther away from cities people live, the happier they tend to be. Hey, you hear that? New Jersey, New York? Come on over. Unless you want to stay there and work to make New Jersey a state of Cheongguk, that's good too. But when you come, don't keep voting like the way you've been voting in New Jersey, though. All right, we just want to keep Pennsylvania. Don't want to turn it into New Jersey, New Jersey, or New York. Pennsylvania is fine as it is. One important caveat in the Canadian study is that the authors aren't making any strong statements about causality. There is a clear association between lower population density and reported happiness, but that doesn't mean that low population density causes happiness. A miserable city dweller who moves to the country might simply become a miserable country dweller, in other words. I don't know. I think he'd be pretty happy. But I haven't done a study. No one's paid me to do a study. However, it's clear that there's something about small towns and rural life that's associated with greater levels of self-reported happiness among people who live in those places. The strength of the Canadian study is that it passes out these distinctions at an uncommonly fine level of geographic detail. I think that's the end of the story. All right, that's the end of the story. All right, so, we're all happy here. Yep. Meanwhile, let's see what's going on in the unhappy parts of the world. Electromagnetic radiation power lines, phone masts pose credible threat to wildlife, a report finds. phone mast. That's a pole. Huh? All right, this is in the Telegraph, the British paper. Now, a lot of information is coming out about electromagnetic radiation, and none of it's good. Electromagnetic radiation from power lines, Wi-Fi, phone masts, in other words, poles, and broadcast transmitters pose a credible threat to wildlife. Why are they studying wildlife? Why not human beings? A new report suggests, as environmentalists warn the 5G rollout could cause greater harm. An analysis of 97 studies by the EU-funded review body Eclipse concluded that radiation is a potential risk to insect and bird orientation and planet health. However, the charity BugLife warned that despite good evidence of the harms, there was little research ongoing to assess the impact or apply pollution limits. The charity said serious impacts on the environment could not be ruled out and called for 5G transmitters to be placed away from streetlights, which attract insects or areas where they could harm wildlife. But plenty of insects, dive bomb into those streetlights and kill themselves, don't they? I think they're a greater threat to insects. But anyway, I'm more worried about the effects on people. But Matt Shradlow, CEO of BugLife, said, "We apply limits to all types of pollution to protect the habitability of our environment. But as yet, even in Europe, the safe limits of electromagnetic radiation have not been determined, let alone applied." Yes, we don't yet have the central EU Brussels bureaucracy dictating to us yet. What's going on here? Who's dragging here? Someone pick up the slack. Got to get this dictatorship going here. There is credible risk that 5G could impact significantly on wildlife, and that placing transmitters on LED street lamps, which attract nocturnal insects such as moths, increase exposure and thereby risk. Therefore, we call for all 5G pilots to include detailed studies of their influence and impacts on wildlife, and for the results of those studies to be made public. What about human beings? We're pretty wild. As of March, 237 scientists have signed an appeal to the United Nations asking them to take the risks posed by electromagnetic radiation more seriously. The Eclipse report found that the magnetic orientation of birds, mammals, and invertebrates, such as insects and spiders, could be disrupted by electromagnetic radiation. It also established that plant metabolism is also altered by EMR. The authors of the review conclude that there is an urgent need to strengthen the scientific basis of the knowledge on EMR and their potential impacts on wildlife. In particular, there is a need to base future research on sound, high-quality, replicable experiments so that credible, transparent, and easily accessible evidence can inform society and policymakers to make decisions and frame their policies. Well, 5G is about to come, and there's more and more resistance to it. We'll have to see whether that resistance amounts to anything at all. Meanwhile, some unhappy people, Muslims in jail in China, are very, very unhappy because they're being forced to drink alcohol and eat pork in these re-education camps, according to former inmates. I'm sure that's true. Muslims were, something happened here. Hold on a second. How can I get this to cooperate? Okay. Muslims were detained for re-education by China's government and made to eat pork and drink alcohol, according to a former internment camp inmate. Yes, in Western China, there's a pretty significantly large Muslim population, and the Chinese government is doing all it can to oppress and control this population. One of the means they're using, of course, is to have the Han people ethnic group comprise about more than 90% of the Chinese population. So they're the way they did it in Tibet was to have a lot of Han people live there, move there so as to sort of assimilate Tibet into their territory. And of course, they're doing the same thing with Xinjiang in the western part. And by the way, sort of as a PS and aside, footnote, Russia is threatened by this because more and more Chinese are living in eastern Siberia. And Russia is saying, whoa, we don't want eastern Siberia to become like Tibet. We don't want the Chinese to sort of plant their people there and slowly over decades take over eastern Siberia. You know, Chinese policymakers think in terms of decades and centuries. So Muslims in China are being oppressed. Omir Bekali, one among perhaps 1 million people reportedly arrested and held in mass re-education camps, said he was detained without trial or access to a lawyer and forced to disavow his beliefs while praising the Communist Party. Well, of course you were. What did you think you were in the United States? If you want to, you're in the wrong country. Come here and the left will embrace you. But there, the left, that is to say the communists, will not embrace you. In fact, you're lucky you didn't have your organs transplanted away from you. Mr. Bagali, a Kazakh citizen, said he contemplated suicide after 20 days in the facility, which itself followed 7 months in a prison. Since spring last year, authorities in Xinjiang region have confined tens or even hundreds of thousands of Muslims in the camps, including some foreign nationals. One estimate put the figure at 1 million or more. A U.S. commission called it the biggest mass incarceration of a minority population in the world today, while a leading historian called it culture cleansing. Culture cleansing. The Independent has contacted, that's the newspaper, has contacted the Chinese Foreign Ministry for comment. Asked to comment on the camps by the Associated Press, the ministry said it had not heard of the situation. Well, of course not. Hey, what? No. Deny. When asked why non-Chinese had been detained, it said the Chinese government protected the rights of foreigners in China and that they should also be law-abiding. Protect the rights of foreigners. The right to praise the Communist Party, the right to sing praises to Xi Jinping. Those rights, yes, those rights are certainly protected. Chinese officials in Xinjiang did not respond to a request for comment. When Mr. Bakali refused to follow orders each day in the camp, he was forced to stand at a wall for 5 hours at a time. A week later, he was sent to solitary confinement, where he was deprived of food for 24 hours, he claimed. After 20 days in the heavily guarded camp, he wanted to kill himself. The psychological pressure is enormous when you have to criticize yourself, denounce your thinking, your own ethnic group, said Mr. Bakali, who broke down in tears as he described the camp. Now, these are communist tactics, self-criticism. Not sure where that originated, but it's certainly a very common tactic in communism. I still think about it every night until the sun rises. I can't sleep. The thoughts are with me all the time. The detention campaign has swept across Xinjiang, a territory half the size of India. Let's do one more paragraph. Chinese officials have largely avoided comment on the camps, but some are quoted in state media as saying that ideological changes are needed to fight separatism and Islamic extremism. Radical Muslim Uyghurs have killed hundreds in recent years, and China considers the region a threat to peace in a country where the majority is Han Chinese. Well, re-education camps. We have them in America. Of course, they're otherwise known as public schools and universities. They are doing their best to culture cleanse the minority Muslims. Think what would happen if we did that here. Oh, the left would be, Hollywood would just go berserk. But no, Hollywood is still associating with and is praising and is just in love with the communist regime that is culture cleansing the Muslims. The hypocrisy, the hypocrisy, the hypocrisy. Well, that is the world that we live in. That is the world that is going through judgment during this time. It's going to get intense, but it will not be long. That's where our hope lies. And once we get through this, we have to fight. We can't just lay back. We cannot just lie back and hope for it to pass. We have to get out and fight for God and fight for righteousness. But we will win. We will win because God is on our side. True Father is on our side, and True Father is working in spirit world. He is working in spirit world. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father, this morning for this wonderful rhema that you've given us, and for the hope that you give us in this world where more and more people are feeling despair. Thank you, Father. And this is Tim Elder signing off now. Thank you for joining us. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.